Welcome back, Wanderers. It's Naidra. Today, I'm going to share with you guys my most up-to-date Sorceress build that I've been using, which is the Lightning Spear build, but we're pairing it up with the Fractured Winterglass. And I will say, it not only has been a lot of fun to play, but it also is dealing an insane amount of damage, which I really wasn't expecting. I figured the meta this season was going to be the regular Lightning Spear or the Chain Lightning Spear, but this one is dealing a lot of damage, and we're still able to do our unlimited teleporting, which we've been doing with our past couple of builds. And so with that, for today, I'm going to show you guys exactly what this build looks like. We'll take a look at the setup afterwards, and we'll go into all of that other good stuff as well. Before we dive into that though, if you guys have not yet subscribed to the channel, please don't forget to do so below. Also, if you guys haven't had a chance to check out our merch store, feel free to check that out in our bio as well. That's the best way that you can possibly support the channel. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Alrighty, so we're gonna give this a quick test in a pit tier 80. I will say the way that this functions is gonna be pretty much the same as our previous build we posted, which was our Chain Lightning Spear build. We are going to want to have our defensives on pretty much all of the time. Our unstable current is also going to be on all of the time. We will be spamming our Ball Lightning Spear and Frozen Orb basically all the time as well. So with that said, yes, your arm is probably going to be tired after using this build. I definitely feel it at the end of night every night. I don't need to do arm workouts anymore since I could just do this instead, which has been great, but it is still really, really fun. And like I mentioned, we still get our unlimited teleport, which we absolutely can't beat that. So with that, let's go ahead and give this a quick test. Now, I will say I have been able to do pit tiers 100 with this pretty quickly and pretty easily. The part where we struggle a little bit more, and as per usual with any Sorceress build, is the bosses. They do tend to take a little bit longer. They have quite a bit of health, so it's a little bit harder to get through those guys, but the actual pit itself is probably about a minute and a half or so, where the bosses are taking a few more minutes depending on the setup that you have. But as you can see, this build is doing billions and trillions of damage, and we're easily taking down everything that's in our path without really slowing down for anything. And that's really all we can ask for from a Sorceress build. So really quick, really easy. As you can see, this build is really, really fun to play and really easy to use with the exception of the button mashing. But now that you guys have had a chance to see how this works, why don't we go back to town and see what's making this work. Alrighty, so first, let's go ahead and start off with our equipment. For our equipment, we'll start off with our staff. We are using a two-handed staff. Anytime we use Lightning Spear, this is always going to be the case. When looking at our staff, we're looking for something that's got intelligence on it, maximum life, and critical strike damage. If you can get one that's got a GA, you want to get the GA on critical strike damage and on intelligence if possible. If not, then as long as you have those three stats, you'll be fine. For our tempering, we're looking at tempering on critical strike damage, and we also want to have chance for Lightning Spear to deal double damage, where our masterworking, we're going to want to put all 3 points into our chance for Lightning Spear to deal double damage. Now for our gems, we are going to be using emeralds with this guy. And then for our boots, we are using Flicker Step with this build. Flicker Step is what allows us to be able to continuously have our unstable currents on and allows us to deal as much damage as we're dealing. So it's really important that we have this on. If you don't have Flicker Step, you can replace this for something that's got Orange Herald. However, this is a lot more effective from what I have been noticing here. Now, if you do get one that's got a GA, the GA would definitely go best on damage reduction for close enemies. The other things are not quite as helpful. We don't need additional resistance. We're not dealing additional damage with our ultimate damage, and we're not really walking. We're teleporting all of the time, so movement speed really does not matter for us at all. And then, of course, for masterworking, we're going to want to do the same thing as for our temper. We're going to throw all 3 of our masterworking points into damage reduction from close enemies. And then taking a look at our pants. So for our pants, we are using Tybalt's Will with this build. This is something that is helpful to have, especially for pit pushing. In the later pit tiers, you will notice the difference between having Tybalt's Will and not having it. Now, the most important thing about this is that we get one that's got the 20% increased damage while unstoppable. And then, of course, when we're looking at GAs, we want to get one that's got a GA on all stats. And if we can get one on maximum life as well, that would be great. But all stats is really helpful because of the way that we have our Paragon board set up. Those additional 76 stats are really helping us to ensure that our glyphs are fully activated. Now, looking at our gems for this guy, we are using Topaz. And next up, we've got our gloves. For our gloves, we are using Sid's bindings. These are extremely helpful, more specifically because of the primordial binding. There are some advantages that we're also getting from the familiar's duration increasing by up to 50%, which is great. And of course, if you can get one with the GA, make sure you get one on primordial binding, where we're going to put all 3 of our master working points into primordial binding as well. Now, as you can see, I'm not quite there yet, but even with where we're currently at, we are dealing a crazy amount of damage, and this is just so helpful. So definitely want to make sure that you've got this one. Next up, for our chest armor, we are using the Raiment of the Infinite. I was using the Shroud of False Death for a little while, and then I somehow used all of my luck for the season and ended up getting this Raiment of the Infinite. I've never had a perfect item before, and this is just something that made me really happy to see. Now, for our masterworking for this guy, we want to put all 3 of your masterworking points into Glass Cannon. And then for our runes, we are using Sir and Vex with this. This allows us to get an additional +1 to all skills for 10 seconds, which is really helpful to have. Next up, we've got our helmet, which of course is going to be the Shako. And I will say this is something that is required for this build in order to be able to make this work. And the reason for that is we absolutely need that cooldown reduction that we have at the bottom. Without that cooldown reduction, we really wouldn't be able to teleport like we are. And that's really the point of this build overall. Now, that being said, if you can get one with the GA, naturally, we want to get that GA on cooldown reduction. And as usual, we want to throw all 3 of our masterworking points into cooldown reduction as well. For our runes, we are using Bach and Thul with this. The purpose of that is it is giving us Mystical Frost Nova. Not only is it going to allow us to deal additional damage to our chilled and frozen enemies, but on top of that, because it's the mystical version of it, it gives us some additional damage as well. For our amulet, we are using the Fractured Winterglass. Now, didn't get quite as lucky on this guy as I did with my raiment. However, this is the only piece of equipment that I have where I was actually able to get all 3 of my masterworking points into the item that I wanted. So that was exciting in its own. Really, the only thing we care about here is we're getting that additional primordial binding. And of course, we want to try to get a perfect aspect at the bottom, as close to 65% as you can. That's going to be the most effective. Now, as far as our frozen orbs casting twice or exploding twice, don't care so much about that. This is enough to ensure that we have lightning spear out all the time. Now, the way that Fractured Winterglass has changed, it now only will conjure conjurations that are on your action bar. So you're not going to see your other conjurations getting summoned because of this, which actually works in our favor in this case. That allows us to really have only lightning spears out all of the time, which is the reason why we removed ice blades from our action bar at the bottom as well. So really, really good to have. Now, again, all 3 points into primordial binding. Now, with that, for our gem, we are using a skull for this guy. We barely have our armor cap at the point that we're at right now, so definitely can't be changing this. Next up, for our first ring, we did finally get the Ring of Starless Skies. This has been especially helpful because we're getting a lot of attack speed, which is really good. We're getting some good critical strike chance as well. And in addition to that, we're getting up to 50% increased damage with this guy. So really, really good. Now, when masterworking this guy, we're going to throw all 3 points into attack speed. We normally would go for critical strike chance. However, our crit strike chance is already really high. Every single one of our hits is pretty much a critical hit already. So instead, our attack speed is going to make the biggest difference for us overall. And then as far as the gem, just like our amulet, we are going to be using a skull for this guy as well. And then lastly, for our equipment, we've got our Tal Rasha's ring. Of course, this is a non-negotiable with any sorceress build that you have. With that being said, we want to try to get one that's got a GA on cooldown reduction. And of course, we're going to throw all 3 points of our masterwork into cooldown reduction as well. Now, the second most important thing on here, and arguably the most important thing, is that we have a good aspect at the bottom. We need to have at least 20% or higher in order to be able to deal as much damage as we're dealing. So really important. If you can get one that's 25, that's going to be perfect. That's what you want to prioritize over anything else on this item. And then for our gem, we are using a diamond for this one instead, because our armor cap is already met. This will help our resistances a little bit overall. Now then, let's take a look at our boss powers, as these ones stayed the same. We are using Beast in Ice's Sleep for our primary. That one deals an insane amount of damage, and also it can freeze enemies, which will allow us to take advantage of our skill tree in full. And then for our modifier powers, we are going to be using Beastmaster's Training. We've got Sinrat's Flames, and we've also got Hatred's Embrace Haste. I will say we're not doing any type of snapshotting with this build, at least not as far as I know, so we don't have to worry about anything like that from the past. I absolutely despise snapshotting. I think that is such a cheap way to be able to beat the game. If it's not intended to be done, it should be removed. Although I also will say it's not necessarily the player's fault. This is something that's been happening for seasons, and yet Blizzard has done absolutely nothing about it. But personally, I prefer to just not do any of that snapshotting stuff at all if possible. And then taking a look at our skill tree, for our skill tree, we're going to go ahead and just put 2 points into any of the basic skills at the top. It really does not matter. We're not using this at all, so it doesn't matter which ones you pick. We just need enough so that we can make our way on down to our core skills. And speaking of which, taking a look at our core skills, we're just going to be putting 1 point into Frozen Orb. We're not worried about dealing damage with Frozen Orb. Specifically, we are just using this so that we can trigger additional lightning spears to come out as well. We will take this on up to Enhanced Frozen Orb, and then we'll finish it up with Greater Frozen Orb. If you are having problems with mana, you could always switch it to the Destructive Frozen Orb. This does help getting back some of that mana, but between the Starless Skies and everything else that we've got, we don't even get close to running out of mana with this build, so you don't have to worry about that. And then lastly, for our core skills, we are going to throw 1 point into Potent Wording. This does help overall with our resistances. We are casting all 3 elements with this, and so this does help to balance out our resistances a little bit, but really we're just doing it so we can move on down to our defensive skills. For our defensive skills, we are taking Flame Shield for 1 point, and then we are taking that up to Enhanced Flame Shield for 1 point as well. And now we do want to make sure that we get this extra point. That increased burn radius does really help because it does ensure that we have more burning enemies. And when our enemies are burning, we deal more damage to them as well. And since we're not using Fireball with this build, this and also our Mercenary are really the only way that we're dealing fire damage at this point. We also will be taking Teleport, but for this one, of course, we're going to need to take 5 points. We need that cooldown to be as low as humanly possible. That way, we're able to teleport nonstop. And then we are taking this up to Enhanced Teleport and finishing it up with Shimmering Teleport. Next up, we've got our Glass Cannon. We're getting 6 of those points from our Raiment, and we can potentially get a couple more points from that as well. So really excited to masterwork that appropriately so we can take advantage of that additional damage output that we're getting from Glass Cannon. And then, of course, we are taking Ice Armor with this build, taking it down to Enhanced Ice Armor. And then lastly, Mystical Ice Armor. This does give us some additional damage that we can deal to them as well, which really helps us, especially in the end game and more specifically for the higher level pit tiers. And then we'll make our way on down to our Conjuration skills, where we will be taking 1 point into Align the Elements. We've also got 3 points into Protection. Next up, we've got our Lightning Spear with 5 points, taking that down to Enhanced Lightning Spear and finishing it up with Roaring Lightning Spear. And then we also will be taking Primordial Binding for 3 points. We currently have 27 ranks on here, which is giving us an additional 54% times summon damage and also some crazy mana regeneration as well. But as you guys noticed, this is also another one of those items that we have some opportunity to masterwork a little bit better, which means we should be getting quite a bit more damage coming from our Primordial Binding, which is really exciting. And then we've also got 3 points into Mana Shield. And then lastly, for our Conjurations, we are going to put 1 point into Familiar, taking it down to Enhanced Familiar, and then wrapping it up with Invoked Familiar. Now, jumping on down to our Mastery skills. For our Mastery skills, we're going to take 3 points into Inner Flames. We're going to be taking 1 point into Ball Lightning, taking it down to Enhanced Ball Lightning, and wrapping it up with Wizard's Ball Lightning. And then for our ultimate skills, we are taking 3 points into Permafrost. We'll also be taking 3 points into Icy Touch. So right now we've only got 2 points we can afford to throw into Hoarfrost, but between our Mystical Frost Nova, also our Beast and Ice's Sleet, this is really going to be helping us to deal additional damage, as a lot of our enemies are going to be chilled or frozen pretty much all of the time. We will also be taking Unstable Currents for just 1 point, just so we have it, and then we're also going to take Prime Unstable Currents for that additional attack speed. We then will take 1 point into Conduction, taking it down to Convulsions for 3 points, and then lastly we've got Electrocution for 3 points. And then on the right hand side, we can't forget, we will need to also take 3 points into Elemental Synergies and 3 points into Evocation. And then last but not least, for our key passive, we are going to be taking Enlightenment. Now, before we jump over to our Paragon board, for our enchantments, we are taking Familiar, and we're also going to be taking Teleport. Now, taking a look at our Paragon board, for our first board, we are going to be taking the Conjurer Glyph. This is currently at level 88, and it's giving us an additional 472% conjuration damage. So once we get this up to 100, we should be getting quite a bit more damage coming out from this as well. Now, I will say, we just want to take enough intelligence around this node just so that we can activate it for now. Once we've got all 5 of our boards, then we're going to circle back to this and add the additional intelligence points on the side here. But for now, we just need enough to activate this and move on over to the next board. And speaking of the next board, we'll go ahead and make our way on up. For the second board, we are going to be taking the Searing Heat board. And this one, we're going to be pairing up with our Tactician Glyph. And then we'll make our way on over to the right to our third board, which is going to be the Elemental Summoner board. And this one, we're going to be pairing up with the Elementalist Glyph. We'll go ahead and make our way on up to the top. For our fourth board, we are going to be taking the Sea Slit Conduit board, and this we're going to be pairing up with our Destruction Glyph. Now, similar idea here to the first board. Let's just grab enough dexterity around this glyph just so that we can activate it for now. And then once we hit our 5 boards and we've gotten all 5 of our glyphs, then we can come back and we can add some additional points to this to maximize on the additional critical strike damage. And then for our 5th and final board down at the bottom, we will be taking the Enchantment Master board. And this one, we're going to be pairing up with the Unleash glyph. Now, once you've got all 5 of your boards set up and all of your glyphs activated, then we can circle back and we can grab those additional nodes around the first board and also the 4th board. And then that'll also give us an opportunity to grab things like additional non-physical damage or potentially some additional attack speed as well. Alrighty, and then next up we have our Mercenary. So for our Mercenary, we will be taking Subo, and this one will be using Wire Trap, taking it down to Ready at Hand. We're then going to take Cover Fire, and we'll finish this up with Opening Fire for some additional critical strike damage. For our reinforcement, we will be taking Aldkin, so this is a change from our previous build. We do need some additional fire damage or burning enemies, and this is the best way we can do that without sacrificing anything on our action bar. Now, Aldkin is going to be using Storm of Fire, and this is going to trigger anytime player casts any skill in combat. So with that said, that's all I have for you guys for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. Until next time, Wanderers.